This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Lansing. Today we are joined by Vanessa Guerra. She is a member of the Michigan House of Representatives. I want to speak with you about voting in the state of Michigan. A lot of discussion nationwide about creating scenarios whereby people can vote with greater ease.
Right.
And so there's a question right now about whether Michigan should make its absentee voter laws more permissive. What's your sense about where Michigan is today, which really requires there to be a lot of checks in order for someone to be an absentee voter?
Yeah, in general, I'm supportive of no reason absentee voting because we want to encourage people to vote and make it as easy as possible.
Right.
And obviously for individuals that perhaps work 2 jobs, they really don't have that chunk of time in one day to vote. And so if we have no reason absentee voting, it'd be easier for them to just get something in the mail and and send it in.
And 27 states have no reason absentee mail.
Right.
20 states have it. Interestingly, we look around the region, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, they all have no excuse absentee voting. So
yeah, Michigan is a little late to the game
one
on
could
that.
argue.
Right.
One could argue.
But I think that the focus really needs to be on making it easier. So if a person is utilizing no reason absentee, being able just to make that request through mail and not necessarily having to go in person to a clerk to receive that ballot.
And let's talk about that because there is a bill moving right now that would allow no reason absentee voting, but you'd have to appear in person in the clerk's office 75 days before the election.
Right.
What's the policy reason behind the personal appearance? Do you have a sense?
My sense is that it deals with voter fraud, but my argument to that would be that if we're truly concerned about voter fraud, then we should provide more funding to our clerks for voting systems. So they've been asking for new voting equipment for years now, and obviously if we had more enhanced equipment and improved equipment, it would be much less of a concern than it is right now.
So some states have permanent absentee voting,
yes,
where you apply once and that's it.
Right.
What's your sense of that possibility?
Right. Well, even with this piece of legislation, you
can you file for permanent absentee status with this legislation? Do you have a sense? I don't think so.
I'm not sure. I don't
think so. So would you be in favor of a system where there could be a permanent absentee voting?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's coming back to making things easier, and the problem right now with requiring people to go into a clerk's office is that, we're not giving the clerk's office more money to hire an additional staff member, so now they're dealing with irregular duties as a township clerk or a county clerk, and now they're also taking on these absentee voters that are coming in on a daily basis, taking them away from their regular duties.
This is also, it's been collapsed into the question of straight ticket voting.
Yes.
Now, there are 10 states, only 10 states, which allow straight ticket voting. That literally means you go to your polling place and you can hit a button which allows you to vote all Democrat, all Republican, all Libertarian. What's your sense of straight ticket voting?
I understand that their argument is that we want informed voters. But the thing is, with these ballots, they're front and the back, and they're quite long. And in a lot of urban communities, in mine, for example, we've decreased the number of polling locations. So we're increasing the time an individual is going to be spending at a polling location, but we're decreasing the number of polling locations.
So if you eliminate straight ticket voting, fewer polling places, longer lines, because you have to take a longer time to hit each box.
Yes, and it does take quite a bit of time, especially in our larger elections. I mean, that can add an additional 3 minutes, which on its own doesn't sound like a lot of time, but especially if you're an elderly person or, it takes time, and that means that we will have longer lines.
So some folks then are tying the elimination of straight ticket voting with the absentee formula to ease absentee voting restrictions. Would you, at this stage, be in support of blending those two together, or do you want to separate them?
I would like to separate them because I am, with the straight ticket voting elimination, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because individuals already have the option. Voters have the option of going down one by one and checking off their list, which a number of voters do utilize that. And so why are we taking away a tool for them? Because we're saying that perhaps they haven't done their research, but maybe they have, and maybe they are supportive of all of the Republicans or Democrats.
It's a bit paternalistic to say, well, if you're straight ticket voting somehow, some way, you're less than. You're not voting as diligently as others. I'm just saying. I want to shift gears and talk about what's known as presumptive parole.
Yes.
What we know is in Michigan today, the average prisoner is serving 2.5 years longer than their earliest possible release date, than their minimum sentence. Some may think that's terrific. Others may think that's not the best use of resources. So the question becomes, should there be a formula whereby more folks can be presumptively released at that minimum sentence? What's your sense of that?
Well, my sense is that you're correct in that it's largely focused on resources and conserving those resources. And I understand that from a budgetary standpoint, but particularly when it comes to our criminal justice system, if we're only looking at the cost of things, that puts us in a lesser position because there's certainly a risk associated with releasing certain prisoners. And this bill is not automatic, so it's not that we're automatically going to be paroling individuals that don't necessarily deserve it. They'd still go through the parole process. But I would like to see perhaps a smaller scale version of this bill implemented first and see what those results would be like.
It's interesting you say that because as it stands today, like you said, prisoners would be assessed, they'd be ranked, and those that are deemed not to be a menace to society, those would get the presumptive parole. But I understand the current form of the bill, it's all-inclusive. There are no crimes that are excluded. So what you're describing, Representative, is that you want a smaller version so certain crimes would be excluded?
So perhaps a pilot program where we would exclude first-degree criminal sexual conduct offenders or serious felonious assault.
But for argument's sake, and I'm a lawyer, you'll be a lawyer, so let's kind of make this a law school exam. For argument's sake, could one not argue that, look, if you've been convicted of criminal sexual assault, is it likely that you would be ranked and assessed not a menace to society?
Certainly, I mean, they do look at their behavior in prison and their...
And that's the question, what are they looking at?
Exactly. And so there is a long list, and that's why I mentioned, it's not an automatic thing, but I'm most concerned is that I have a correctional facility in my county, for example, and so when they're paroled, they're taken to the bus stop and given a bus ticket. And if they have family members, they may be picked up, but it's very likely those individuals are coming back to my communities. And so...
And that begs the question. I mean, it's one thing to parole someone. What are you doing with them once they are paroled? Are there programs in place? I mean, I know this bill doesn't deal with that question, but does Michigan have programs in place for those that are... Because look, if we want to attack recidivism, we need to look at the whole individual.
Yes, of course. And with the programming, the problem is, obviously corrections gets a large portion of our budget, and so it's difficult to make the plea for more money for programming for them, but there is a reason why they would ask for more money, because they do want to, the individual the offender is in their correction system, but once they're back in our county, they're not under the control of MDOC for the rest of their life. And we can't place that burden on MDOC either, but in the alternative, then what funding are we provided to the county to offer services for these parolees?
What's really compelling about this presumptive parole debate is that the governor supports, the attorney general does not. They're both in the same party. You're a Democrat. One would have thought that you would support it. And so it's breaking on very interesting party lines. Where does this go from here?
It's a very mixed bag of supporters and
opponents.
It really is, and we were split amongst my own caucus as well. The last that I heard is that in the Senate, the chair of Judiciary, I believe, had no intentions of passing the bill. He was very much opposed to it. And so I don't know if it's likely this will pass again, but this isn't the first time it's been introduced. So
you can
if it's not passed, we can certainly look at it again in a different version of it.
Her name is Vanessa Guerra. She is a member of the Michigan House of Representatives. My name is Brad Pomerance. In Lansing, this is Charter Local Edition. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Always good to see you.
Yes. you.